So go ahead, Sophia. We're going to start with the deck here.
Yeah, the first order of business, Mike, would be to call for the approval of the minutes or the meeting summary from our last meeting. If there's anybody that wants to make that motion, and
Is there any, first off, is there any discussion? Anybody want to pull anything out and talk about? All right. Nothing to be pulled out. Can I get a motion to accept as presented, please? That's by Kevin. Motion by Kevin. Second. Can I get a second, please? Let's see. Was as co-chair, I'll make a second. All in favor say aye, please. Aye.
Aye.
2, 3, 4. All right, motion approved. Great, meeting minutes were approved. So let's jump into the topics today, the station locations.
Dan Solar.
Thanks, Chair and members. Good morning. Dan Solar, Hennepin County, here today to talk a little bit about our stations and station locations along the alignment. Right now, we're using the month of July to really develop and gather some feedback and information about both possible and potential station locations, and on some of the visualizations we've put together for LRT along the various routes along the corridor. We're bringing them to our advisory committees like this morning, and other community members and businesses, and our open houses this month to gather feedback about that, and continuing discussions and really looking at design options. When we put together station locations, it becomes one of the defining topics of an LRT route is where you would and would not add stations along these routes. And so how did we develop which station study areas we're recommending? Certainly the previous alignment and the previous route that we had kind of guides where we would put some of the stations today. Some of those route areas are new, however. So we've used a lot of stakeholder and community input to do this. We had folks filling out surveys. We had community members looking at our interactive mapping, identifying and placing station locations on that. So that guided our decision making. We looked at where key destinations were along the route. Where do we connect to other transit routes, especially the C line, D line have connections up here, east-west connections across Brooklyn Center and New Hope and across northern Brooklyn Park, and even in Minneapolis, kind of guide where we have transit to transit connections. We looked at spacing, can't have stations too close. This isn't necessarily a local route. We don't want stations one block apart. At the same time, we don't want stations more than a mile apart. It's not a commuter rail line either. It's meant to serve all the areas along it. And so there isn't a magic number to the number of stations. We don't have a set number yet. It'll all kind of be determined under how do we utilize the New Starts guidance and get the maximum ridership and the most beneficial travel time by setting our station configurations up and where we'll put them. So I'll run through a little bit about where we believe, and certainly take any kind of feedback on these topics as we go forward. On the north end of the alignment up in Brooklyn Park, where we're not influenced by the Burlington Northern Railroad and where we are proposing to run LRT on West Broadway as previously designed. We're recommending that the previously developed 4 station areas at Oak Grove Parkway up on the north end, at 93rd Avenue, 85th Avenue, and Brooklyn Boulevard all continue to be part of the route. The spacing is good for these. Each of these serves a little bit of a different and distinct demographic. Of course, around Brooklyn Boulevard, we've got a lot of shopping areas and housing areas right in that area. East-west bus routes on Brooklyn Boulevard as well. On 85th, we've got some east-west routes. We also, of course, serve North Hennepin Community College, Maplebrook Townhomes, the Hennepin County Library, the proposed Center for Arts, potentially some additional housing up in that area. That's a very robust intersection for a station. Up at 93rd, we've got a number of hotels in close proximity. We've also got a number of major businesses like Takeda and others who have located up there to try to pull an employee base with a station connection. And of course, the north end of the line or beginning of the line at Oak Grove Parkway identifies the Target North Campus and an entire redevelopment area up there, as well as a fairly significant park and ride. So we propose those stations to stay the same in their same location. A lot of the design work around those is done. In the middle section here, where we transition from the Burlington Northern Railroad to County Road 81, Brooklyn Boulevard, we're proposing some station areas remain in very close proximity. So we had a station on the Burlington Northern alignment at 63rd. We're proposing to continue to propose a station at 63rd and Highway 81. Got a lot of residential housing in Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center and Crystal up in that area of 63rd. Also Brooklyn Park. That station is actually located in Brooklyn Park. We have the park and ride up there that's located up there. We've got some bus connections up there. We're proposing that 63rd remain a station area. Similarly, then in the city of Crystal, we're proposing that the Bass Lake Road intersection continue to be a station study area. We had a station proposed on the railroad corridor. We're proposing a station on the 81 corridor at Bass Lake Road. High number of transit connections from Brooklyn Center Transit Center, east-west to that station area. Crystal has a significant amount of retail commercial development in there. Certainly there's housing connections in there as well. A lot of multifamily housing, Becker Park, other destination locations. So that becomes, and also we're looking at putting some level of park and ride at the Bass Lake Road intersection, primarily for folks coming from the western suburbs, New Hope and Plymouth, down Bass Lake Road into that area. So that's a pretty robust area. Had decent ridership, will continue to be a station proposed moving forward. As we move down into Robbinsdale, we had a station in downtown Robbinsdale. The previous station was on the BNSF right away, proposed over by EMI and the Hubbard Transit Center with the bus connections over there. We're proposing a station on Highway 81 in downtown Robbinsdale. We've identified a number of possible locations for that station around 41st, around 40th, some different configurations, split side platforms, center platforms. We want to be able to really kind of take advantage of the downtown environment, the connecting businesses and residential properties in the downtown area, the ability of where we might site some leveled size park and ride in and around a Robbinsdale downtown station. And also there's, at least at Hubbard Transit Center, there's a high number of bus connections as well. So how would we do any bus connections between buses that continue to come into Robbinsdale, maybe at Hubbard, maybe at a different location, and the LRT station as well. So downtown Robbinsdale, yes. Exact location and configuration to be determined as we kind of go through this month and interact about that specific location. And then we divert here, and this is where on the BNSF line we followed, and we had a couple stations in Golden Valley, one at Golden Valley Road and one at Plymouth near Theodore Wirth Park, and then some stations on Highway 55. Here, of course, we've identified, you see kind of a long oblong oval at the top of the drawing. That's essentially the North Memorial Hospital campus area. And so we're proposing that the North Memorial Hospital campus area be studied for a station location. We're looking at some locations just north of Abbott, some locations right in front of the hospital, potentially a location kind of coming up diagonally just south of the hospital as we figure out how to come around the West Broadway bridges. So we'll have a number of different locations there. We expect some fairly high ridership. When we've talked to the hospital, they have preferred a station that gives almost some direct route into the campus for both employees through a walkway or some means. And so we're investigating how that might work as well. But we also want to try to allow this station to serve some of the residential properties in and around here as well. So the Robbinsdale North Memorial campus area will be a station study area for us. So as we look at the Minneapolis segment and the Lowry versus West Broadway and some of the connecting areas, we identify some similarities and then we identify some diversions. So I'll kind of talk about these a little bit together and then separately. So with the C line running with the C line BRT line running north-south through this area, we are proposing that we have a station study area at Penn Avenue and either West Broadway and or Lowry. At each of those alignments, we would have a Penn station. Both of those intersection quadrants have commercial and retail development there. They have a lot of residential right adjacent to them, and they are significant bus connections for the C line. Folks can come down from Brooklyn Center Transit Center and then transfer to either of these Blue Line extension routes to the other destinations. So those are a Penn Avenue station area on either Broadway or West Broadway or Lowry are proposed station study areas. Similarly, just to the east on either Lowry or West Broadway, we would propose a Emerson, Fremont, Lyndale. I mean, you see that gets kind of long in there in terms of a study area. Where is the best spot in there for a station that, number one, fits within available and purchased right away in those locations, has easy connection to the D line, north and south, which runs again from downtown up to Brooklyn Center on the Emerson Fremont corridor, adjacent businesses, adjacent commercial properties, adjacent retail, adjacent neighborhoods. Where's the best kind of location and what configuration for a Emerson Fremont station there on either of those lines? So a Penn and Emerson Fremont, Lyndale station study area are both considered for West Broadway and Lowry. Then we start to divert a little bit. So if we follow the orange route, if we follow the Lowry route, we're proposing that we at least study the idea of a station at Lyndale and Lowry, at Washington Avenue and Lowry, where we make the turn. That's very close to the Upper Harbor Terminal redevelopment area and other areas for redevelopment up in that segment of North Minneapolis. And so we want to at least see how a station would fit there, how it would connect, where it would work. So we're proposing that. We're also proposing a station along Washington Avenue, another one if necessary at Broadway that connects Broadway bus routes. It connects the Broadway neighborhood area to Washington Avenue, connects some of the retail areas in there as well. So we're proposing a station there. And then for either alignment, depending on which way we would go, we're looking at a station study area in what we would kind of term the North Loop. And so we've identified right now 10th Avenue and Washington Avenue as that possible location in and around there. So if we use the orange route, we could come up from Target Field and have our first northern stop there and then follow the orange. If we used West Broadway to the orange to the red, we could have a station stop in North Loop, follow the orange route, and then take the red over to West Broadway. So we want to look at that. If we do not go the route towards the North Loop and come out of downtown and end up at Lindale and Plymouth. We think that's a potential station study area as well. There are a number of public facilities and job centers in and around that Emerson or around that Plymouth and Lindale area. Hennepin County's got a government center there. There's a lot of residential property right in there. It makes a good first stop after leaving downtown, just on the north side of I-94. So these become the study areas that we're recommending right now. What do we want to know? So what you'll see is, well, first of all, before we ask things, we want to say, how will we evaluate these areas? Public engagement, looking at spacing, available right away, what kind of trips might they generate, what are the existing and future land use opportunities in and around these areas? Do they serve destinations and population centers? What kind of engagement are we getting, and do they meet our project principles? Meaning, we're going to have so many stations that the ridership and travel time are impacted, but we don't have so few that we're not really serving all the areas that we need to serve. So those will be our evaluation criteria. What do we want to know? And what we'll engage on, both starting, even with today's meeting going forward, is, are we missing any key destinations on these routes that we haven't really served? Does the station placement seem right for where things are today? What about how they develop? Are any of these more important than others? What kind of considerations do we need to take into place? Those kind of things. Are we protecting community assets? So, for example, Nick, if you go back to the Minneapolis map, one of the things we heard yesterday was that box that's there along the south side of West Broadway between Emerson and Fremont. Fremont is North Commons Park. The city of Minneapolis, or primarily the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, is going to make a number of significant improvements at that park. And so how do we not necessarily put a station there, but how do we make sure that either a station on Emerson Fremont or a station on Penn, and how it's configured and how it's signed and how it's guided, can help guide people to that destination as well. So those things will come up along all of these routes. So that's really, you can go back to that slide, Nick, that discussion slide. That's really the kind of things we're looking to pull out and get feedback on as we continue to narrow down not only what is the best route for LRT, but what is the best route with the proper station configuration along it. So that's my piece. That's my spot. Happy to take any questions, hear any comments, get any feedback, have any discussion on any of these discussion questions before we move on to the visualizations.
Nick, can you go back to the Brooklyn Park slide, please? So these, it looks like you've narrowed these down to pretty much these locations. Is this pretty well set in your mind? These
yes, it is. I mean, these 4 spots were 4 locations that were identified in the long ago process, like we're doing right now. These 4 were advanced with a lot of station area planning by the city of Brooklyn Park and adjacent communities. And in fact, the designs and configurations of these stations and station areas are really completed. So yes, we would propose that these are set.
Okay. Is there anybody from Brooklyn Park that has any comments or on those sites? But it sounds like the city's all good with it and surrounding communities, and there really isn't any angst about it, it sounds like. Okay.
Not displacing much on any of those station locations. It doesn't seem like, because it's so, there's just a lot of space as you go up on West Broadway right there, and I think does create a little bit of a walk from the 694 area up to the Brooklyn Boulevard station, but I don't think there's a better solution closer to 694.
Thanks, Chair Ryan. That's correct. I mean, as you know, as you may know, we're completely reconstructing West Broadway up in this area. if we're building LRT. And so these stations will all be center platform stations in West Broadway. You're right, the right-of-way acquisition, certainly from a total property acquisition, is very minimal, if not at all, throughout this entire length. That's correct.
Anyone have any other questions? All right. Can move on to number 4, LRT visualizations. Go ahead, Nick.
All right. Good morning, everybody. So I want to go through some LRT visualizations. You know, these were prepared to, you know, help people see what the concepts were, how LRT would fit within the routes that are being evaluated right now. So the route options. And what we have in this presentation are some representative routes along the alignment. We've put together a whole library of these, and as we go out to the public meetings, we'll have boards and visuals and some handouts that have these in place, and more of them in a few more locations, but for just for so we don't bring 80 slides to this meeting for discussion. We figured we'll do some typical sections along the corridor and discuss them and work from there. So let's start up in Brooklyn Boulevard, and as Dan just mentioned, and from the previous question, the Brooklyn Boulevard design considerations, we're at 90% in that area. So 4 out of the 5 stations, the 4 stations that were up along West Broadway, again, we would propose to keep those in the same location that we have designed. We're in pretty good shape there. The 5th station is the one at 63rd station, and we'll analyze how that fits in there, but we're still proposing to have a station at 63rd, and that would connect to the park and ride in that location. And that's probably the one that's closest to 694-94. You know, it's about maybe a quarter mile south of that intersection. So what we want to do here is we're bringing these visualizations that we'd prepared previously, but it's been a couple years since we've really engaged with the community in the Brooklyn Park area. And so we want to refresh folks with what the work we've done and the direction we're going in Brooklyn Park. So this is a representative plan of 85th Avenue Station. This is the site plan coming out of our 90% plans. And you can see in this location that this is the station platform center running through this location south of the 85th intersection. Down in this corridor is North Hennepin Community College. Hennepin County Library is kind of the right off the screen here in this, and some also Center for the Arts Development going on. Maplebrook up in this, I guess it would be the northwest corner, and then commercial shopping center on there. So we feel that this is a really robust location for a station, and we've worked really diligently to make sure that we have our pedestrian access to this station safe to both the station and to get across the roadway. So we've enhanced that with the station design and the road design, that those lanes get narrowed down from where they are today, so those pedestrian conflicts with traffic get reduced, that distance does. And so, I kind of view it as the intersection is kind of the main access to this station, but on any of these stations, we'll have a secondary access also. And this one here, we have a Z crossing that would have signals in these locations. So if a pedestrian comes to this, wants to cross the street, they push the button, they recall the signal, they get a red light, and then they can cross over to the station and get to the platform. Or if they continue to walk along, keep going, they can push a button again to go all the way across the road and recall that signal in a safe condition. So you also see in these, as we've designed them, we kind of put them together in so as the pedestrian crosses a station, they come into this box, and this box forces them to turn in the main direction of the light rail coming through there, and look to see if there's traffic coming before they traffic. So it's one of the safety considerations we put into place here on this. Here are some renderings that we put together for those stations. Each station footprint that we had on there are along, well, that's on the design now for Brooklyn Boulevard. They have the same footprint, but we tried to make the facade, or just the architecture of it blend in a little bit more with the area. So you can see that there's kind of a darker tan or light brown facade along this that would match kind of the character of the school and the surrounding businesses through here, and that's how a station area would look here in Brooklyn Park at 85th. And another direction here, this is looking at those pedestrian crossings at that secondary crossing to the south of 85th. And then just a photo of what the station platform looks like, and how, and the shelters and signage and some of the ticket vending on that platform. So I'm going to move down to Crystal unless there's any questions or discussions on Brooklyn Park area. Okay, so in Crystal, we want to confirm there, as we've rolled out the routes, we've identified County Road 81 as really being our route option through Crystal and through Robbinsdale. So we want to confirm that center running at grade on County Road 81 works within this area. In the Crystal area, existing, there's 6 lanes of traffic on County Road 81, three lanes each direction. So with the light rail going in there, we would reduce that lanes down to 4 lanes. So that would be 2 lanes in each direction with the center running LRT going through there. And then as Dan pointed out in our station presentation, that the Bass Lake Road design would be in development. We'd look at how that station area and access to it would work. And also Bass Lake Road, with the high volumes through there, we need to pay some attention to how the traffic operates there with County Road 81 and a reduction in lanes. So this is a visualization. We'll have these on boards as we go out to the public, as well as in these presentations. And this is what the boards will look like in a larger view, so they can walk up and see them a little bit and see the context. But up in this right-hand side, upper right-hand side, is a photograph of that area and what it looks like. What we see here in the main picture is a rendering of that photograph, so that this is the existing condition out there. And then we have a key map here showing us where we are along the alignment. So we see that we're just south of Bass Lake Road in Crystal. And this is the existing condition. So we have a frontage road on the west side, the 6 lanes of traffic, a pretty good sized median through here, boulevards, and trails on both sides. And then you can see that this is a more of a business industrial area, so business industrial center on this side, some businesses, U-Haul, and on the west side. So I'm going to flip here and see that this is the proposed center running through this area, and I'm going to flip back a little bit and to show that with the center running and reducing it to 4 lanes, that we pretty much fit within that existing curb line out there. So the impacts are pretty light to the existing frontage roads through that area. We were able to maintain adequate, or robust pedestrian trails on each side, maintain the frontage roads, keep the 4 lanes of traffic with the light rail in here. Now, in all of these, they're really to show in context how things fit through here as we go through design and work with our project partners and get more into design next year. We'll start looking at how things fit. We'll start looking a little bit more at things like vegetation and plantings and how that would fit in here. And what you also don't see in this view would be any turn lanes, left turn lanes through here. This is just the guideway that we're seeing. So there's a lot of work that we need to do, but this is really in context of how things fit in general along the alignment. So I'm going to move south here in Crystal. This is down by 48th Avenue, a little bit farther south from Bass Lake Road. This is more of a residential area, so you can see on the east side, frontage road along 81, residential on both sides. There's a trail on both sides in this area, 6 lanes of traffic, pretty good sized median there and boulevards. And again, as we flip down through here, with the center running light rail, we were able to maintain that existing curb line area, so we fit within that roadway footprint in this area and maintain the pedestrian trails and frontage roads. Any questions on Crystal?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, Candace.
This is Candace Otha. I'm wondering how it would impact the actual intersection of Bass Lake and County 81. That's been an ongoing issue with the BNSF alignment. How would this be different from that?
We will have some layouts here as we start going out to the public that show, but we can maintain the existing intersection movements on Bass Lake Road with an at-grade option, but we know that with the lane reduction and that there is some level of service that we need to evaluate, in a built condition. So we're looking at what our options are there in that intersection. So we have some work to do to look at, how we can maximize the level of surface and the traffic through that intersection. So we can fit an interchange at grade, but we are looking at some other options in that area at this time. But some work to do on that.
I have to say this is a big improvement from what BNSF was, in my opinion. And I've been around light rail for many years. And I like, to a certain extent, the narrowing if it can handle the traffic congestion that we've been having that caused it to go to 3 lanes in each direction in the first place.
Agreed. Any other Crystal questions? If not, I'll move down to Robbinsdale. And so same considerations from Robbinsdale. Like I said, we're proposing a center running at grade on County Road 81. One thing in Robbinsdale with the medians there, wider medians in this area and the right of way available, that we feel that's 2 lanes of traffic at this time on County Road 81 through Robbinsdale. With the center running guideway, we can maintain those 2 lanes of traffic. We strongly believe we can maintain the existing intersections that are in the downtown area, the 42nd, the 41st, and 40th intersections and those turning movements. And so as we're evaluating how the light rail would work within context of the downtown operating on 81, we want to focus on pedestrian safety and crossings, that pedestrian environment, and help not only to get to a light rail to a station area across the light rail, but maybe some of the concerns we've heard are a light rail could potentially divide the city more than what 81 does, and our hope is, as we work on the design, we make those pedestrian crossings and that environment friendlier and make it more of a connection as opposed to a divide, so make it more inviting to cross. And some of the work we'll do through there is with that is narrow lanes through that area, so reducing the speed a little bit of the traffic. We can still maintain the capacity that's needed through there and what's needed for that area. So again, on these, we need to develop and work with the city on things such as landscaping, streetscaping, fine tune the designs, fine tune how things fit within there and what the impacts are to adjacent properties and how we fit within the right of way. So this view again is just south of this is actually just south of 41st Street, which is kind of up on the top of the screen here. You can see the town center up above. There's a retaining wall. There's some parking in here. We know that there's underground parking in this location. We have 2 lanes of traffic, a sidewalk along both sides of this area, sidewalk trails, and 2 lanes of traffic, and then turning movements at the intersection. And then here's the Robbins Center on the side of the screen in the existing conditions. So I'm going to flip to the center running at grade proposed alignment, and you can see that we maintain that wall along town center through here. You know, we want to make sure as we're going through design, looking at it, that again we focus on the pedestrian experience to make sure that it's convenient and safe to get, you know, around this downtown area to light rail stations across the roadway. The one thing you can see is I'm going to flip back a little bit here is that road does widening out in this location. So, you know, we know that this would impact the Robbins Center parking lot. Some stalls would be eliminated with this alignment, and what we would work on is with the ownership there of mitigation for the lack of loss of parking through this area.
How many total spots was that gone, Nick? Do you remember?
It was around 20, Mike, I believe.
Okay. Thanks.
But you know, as we refine it, that number could change a bit, but that's a ballpark magnitude of it.
Okay, thanks.
Again, you know, as I mentioned, this guideway, there's shown in the pink along here is a wider median, and these are left turn shadows. So that's a wider median to accommodate for the left turns through here. And these are areas where we can, you know, look in the future, how do we treat those? You know, likely not just straight concrete, but we would have to work with the city or the county and you know, how these get maintained and how we handle that, you know, if it's enhanced streetscaping or if there's some kind of low level landscaping along there, and the same along the sidewalks. Right now we're just showing sidewalk through these areas. I'm gonna go a little bit farther south. This is getting south near the North Memorial area where there's a frontage road on both sides of the roadway. So we've got the 4 lanes each direction, wide median, boulevards on both sides. We have a frontage road on both sides with sidewalk and trails on either side in this location. So that's the existing condition. Flipping over again, we can stay within that existing right of way. You know, we would use up that center median in parts of the boulevard to fit within this area, but able to maintain the frontage roads through here.
Excuse me, Nick.
Again, yes, go ahead.
This is Tim Baylor. First of all, good morning, everyone. Could you back up a bit and show the rendering north of 41st Street to Lake Drive? Do you have a rendering of what that looks like as it bisects the Lake Drive and the McDonald's location?
I don't have it for this presentation, Tim, but you know, this is something we can pull out and we can take a look at here also in the future. I don't have it available for here. I'm just showing some select renderings as we go through for time's sake, really.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, again, we're down here by North Memorial, looking at how center running fits through here, and as in all of these renderings, we'll have to really, you know, pay attention as we get to intersections and how we handle the intersections and the turning movements, and that will affect, you know, the alignments and space needed for these alignments. Any other Robbinsdale questions?
I had a question, Nick.
Sure.
For the station locations, what would be done to mitigate the impact of the frontage roads on pedestrian access to the stations?
Well, I guess as far as the mitigation, we're you know, the first thing would be are we impacting that frontage road? You know, we'll try to work on a design that doesn't impact it, but if we do, we'll have to figure out, you know, how we handle the traffic that's along there.
Sorry, just to clarify my question. I was thinking about the frontage road kind of adding an extra barrier for people that are walking, trying to access the LRT station.
So basically, you're thinking in this slide, you know, the frontage road there adds a barrier between 81 and area. So, you know, as we get through there, again, we'll have to evaluate how we get there. We'll want to make sure that they're safe and convenient. You know, at this point, you know, we don't see the elimination of a frontage road through here in this location, and we're able to maintain those trails. But, you know, as we get farther into the design, you know, that this is really going to be when we're in hardcore design next, you know, going into next year and throughout, we'll really evaluate how we make those safe for pedestrians, that we're not having them right up against the road when we don't have to. So, and provide those buffer zones, and we'll work with the communities, you know, on how that boulevard would, you know, get handled, that buffer zone would get handled. Does that answer the question, Alex?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay. All right, I'm going to move into Minneapolis. So a little bit more for consideration. We have the two route options there, the West Broadway, Washington Avenue route, or the Lowry Washington Avenue route and West Broadway. You know, so, you know, one of the main things here is we need to evaluate the links and evaluate the links that go into each one of those options. So that's the kind of spaghetti map that we've seen at the bottom of the map, getting us out of downtown and up to either one of these routes. We do know that there's going to be parking impacts in Minneapolis with either one of the route alignments. And so, you know, we're evaluating what the parking impacts are and coming up with a toolbox of mitigations that would deal with parking impacts. You know, for instance, district parking, you know, do we look at side street options? Do we evaluate specific properties? You know, there's a whole toolbox, and we want to make sure that we're coming up with options that best serve the communities in these locations. So that is a key thing that we're looking at, and we know that is a concern of business owners and folks that are in this area. We also need to evaluate more. You know, these aren't going to focus a lot on the signals and the intersections and the turn lanes along there. You know, we're working with the city and the county in these areas. We're going to have workshops to evaluate how we handle intersections, and we keep, you know, turning movements that are necessary and the intersections signalized that are as necessary, and kind of make sure that we're evaluating all that. And so again, we need to develop, you know, as we continue to move forward into design in the future, we'll get more into the detail and landscaping, streetscaping. You know, we're talking with the city on bike facilities. You know, if we're not able to maintain bike facilities around these routes, what is the mitigation for those, and how do we handle that? We understand that that's something that we need to pay attention to and focus on. And you know, even as I roll out these visualizations, you know, we don't have specific dimensions on them because we're working to see, you know, we've got, you know, on West Broadway about 26 feet outside of the guideway. We have a guideway going down the middle, and then there's 26 feet on either side. And how do we allocate that 26 feet for traffic operations and for sidewalk operations? We're working with the county and the city on that to come up with the best plan that really, you know, focuses and makes a good pedestrian bike way, as well as maintaining traffic through this area. And I'm just looking here at what workshops. I think one of the questions from Felicia is, yes, some of the initial workshops that we'll have with the city and the county would be kind of more internal on operations. But as we roll these out, we'll be working with the communities, Felicia, through the BAC, CAC, and on these, and we'll ask for input and ideas on how folks, you know, think that things can operate well. But I think the initial stab we'll take internally and look, you know, with the owners and operators of those roadways of you know, how things work in that area, and then have those options to bring out to the community. So this first view here is Lowry Avenue at Newton. This is pretty representative of most of Lowry Avenue. The residential with some commercial mixed in here. It's 2 lanes of traffic. There is a very on both sides, I guess you'd call it a wide gutter pan, about I think a 5 or 6 foot gutter pan that's concrete that's used as a bikeway through here with sidewalks on each side and boulevards through here. And I'm gonna flip here to the center running. So you can see as we go down West Broadway or down Lowry, that with the center running, that it does widen out this footprint through here. So you know that it starts pushing out the sidewalks in these locations within that right of way where you know they might be in a little bit more now. I'm gonna keep in this video too. We show the one lane of traffic. Again, we need to work with the city, the county, and reach out to the community about how the best way to allocate this space in here outside the guideway. And you know, in this rendering, we're showing you know what's called sharrows, you know, to share the lane with bikes through this area. You know, is this the end design? No, there's a lot of work we need to do about how this space is used, and if we continue bikes on this, or if we provide or work on mitigation and provide different opportunities. I'm going down to Washington Avenue here and taking a look at it. You know, just below this box here is 94 on the screen, and you know a little bit more industrial area in this location. There's 4 lanes of traffic each way. There's parking on both sides along most of Washington Avenue. Sidewalk on either side. And this is how a center running guideway would fit within that Washington Avenue area, reducing this down to 1 lane in each direction. You know, we're showing accommodating some of the left turn lanes, and you know the potential for providing parking at least on one side through this area and how it fits. I'm going to go over here to West Broadway now, and this is West Broadway around the Queen Avenue area where we have, you know, single family residential here on, I guess it would be more the southwest side, and, you know, a little higher density apartments on the northeast side. 5 lanes of traffic here, so we have 4 lanes each direction with that center turn lane through here. Sidewalk on either side that's very close to the roadway. And this is what it would look like with the center running through here. So obviously, you know, along here the parking is not available with this. Maintain the sidewalks on either side, one lane of traffic in each direction with that center running guideway through here. And a little bit different picture here. This is at West Broadway at Emerson Avenue. So Emerson is just kind of at the bottom of the screen. Well, actually, you can see the view up there in this little thing with the signal of Emerson here. So we're kind of up above the intersection, looking down the alignment here. 4 lanes of traffic, parking on either side, sidewalks through here, and with the center running through here. You know, we reduce this down to a single lane of traffic in each direction, and accommodate peds and in this area with that walkway. With that, I don't know. I can stop here, and if there's any questions, we do have some other evaluate options that have been brought up. You know, with our discussion as we've rolled this out. You know, one of them is what does side running look like, and what does an elevated section look like. So we want to kind of roll those out here and discuss those a little bit with this. But are there questions that are coming up here?
Nick, there's a question or follow up in the chat from Felicia, and maybe I'll start to answer some of it a little bit too. Is just kind of some of what Nick was mentioning about kind of like turn lanes and operations. That is part of the discussion we want to have with the community in July and August. From a perspective too, so Metro Transit, right, is not the owner of the roadways. So we have to work with the county and the city when we're doing stuff in communities that we operate in, right? So we might run the transit service, but if the county says there's no way that you can do this on this roadway or something like that, we still have to work some of that out. So we often have a lot, kind of technical questions of, well, what's the traffic volume on this roadway? What would happen if we do this? And that's some of the stuff that we do for sure need to do. But what Nick is saying is that whole operations piece of the roadway is a conversation we need to have a lot with the community. So Nick is busy kind of putting together some of the technical considerations so people can kind of weigh the benefits and impacts of certain solutions and kind of discuss that. So I don't think it was intended to mean that we're not going to have conversations with the broader community. It's just also we need to do some technical work so we can actually have an informed conversation on that front. So we plan to bring some of that information out kind of as we do some of the virtual and in-person open houses in July, and it would be really beneficial to have some smaller group discussions with some of the leaders that are on this call here. So Felicia sitting down with your team, I think Kenya's on the call, sitting down with you, and other Minneapolis folks that might be on the call. I think Jimmy is as well, and going to specific areas, from the business perspective, and kind of having kind of workshop-y discussions. Is what we actually wanted to, I tried to reach out, to set up a couple even before this meeting so that we could get into it. But it's really helpful when we can have some of that like kind of small group hash it out workshop, and we would turn to some of you as leaders in your specific organizations to kind of help us with what that small group would be, because we definitely want to get into those details. It could take a while to hash things out, and even for this meeting, we run out of time pretty quickly. So breaking it down a little bit more. So anyways, just want to offer that and kind of put some context to that as well. So we really want to have more in-depth conversations and kind of an in-person setting where we can roll some stuff out and kind of roll up the sleeves and get into it a little bit.
Yes, that's definitely. In a nutshell, we need to do some homework internally with the project partners to figure out, what some of the options are, so we have options to roll out and have a good discussion with as Sophia said, everybody out there, whether it's a smaller group or a larger public forum or these advisory committees here. And then I think Alex, go ahead.
There is a Minneapolis contingent that has been, we've been talking and meeting informally about the options and the potential impacts of each of these options. So I suspect that we'll keep talking. But my personal concern is along Broadway Avenue. I think that the loss of any parking on Broadway Avenue and the loss of any vehicular traffic lanes will be devastating. And I think it will have what may be considered the impact that 94 had coming through the North Minneapolis. I think it's going to be divisive and counterproductive. We've been working hard to maximize this main artery coming through Minneapolis. And I don't know that, in fact, I do know that this LRT line will be counterproductive to that from what I've seen in other parts of the metropolitan area. And so we will be working and still talking with the small group in Minneapolis. I'm going to make sure that Felicia is involved and included in that as well. It would be helpful to get more renderings, Nick, rather than just one or two intersections, so that we can see what the alignment looks like throughout the entire quarter of Broadway or Lowry. And I look forward to having those discussions.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, we can bring more material and both renderings and alignments or layout maps to look at what impacts are.
I wanted to make a brief comment as well. Looking at these renderings, I think it's important to have the context that West Broadway, as it stands right now, is one of the most dangerous streets to walk, bike, and to drive on in the city and in the county right now. And that's because it over prioritizes driving. And there's really not a whole lot of safe access for other people. So definitely recognize the concerns about access to businesses and parking, but I think anything that reprioritizes the street space to make it safer for people that are walking and trying to access this new transit line would be a big improvement on West Broadway.
Thank you.
Picking up from the chat, just also want to acknowledge that we're not proposing that we would not have turn lanes or left turn lanes. It's just about placing them and balancing some things. So it's a part of the details of the conversation that we really have to get into as well.
Yeah. And I think the other question from Alex was just, yes, as we get farther into the design and stuff, you know, we can start and working with project partners and focusing on routes, you know, we can populate these visualizations a little bit more. I think it's just as we're trying to determine how that space gets allocated, you know, we want to focus on the space and the usage of it, and then we can start, you know, filling in, you know, green space and hardscape and, you know, some of the different amenities that would go in that area. Okay, so let's look at some of these other options that were evaluated based on input we've had from the community and groups, advisory committees like this. Again, side running and elevated. So one of the first things that was asked is, you know, can you take a look at an elevated section through here, and what are the impacts and what does it look like? And I believe, you know, one of the thoughts, or, you know, one of the first questions we ask is, okay, if we're elevating, what reason are we elevating for? And I believe, you know, the intent or the question here along, you know, for instance, West Broadway, but this rendering could be typical Lowry or just about any other place along the alignment, is I think that the thought was it would save space or give back more space to the roadway and more opportunities for pedestrians and potentially bikes here. But as we start laying it out with the columns that are needed for the bridge structure, you know, we still need that 28 feet of guideway for the trains. So, you know, the trains have adequate room to get by, and on a structure like that, we need to make sure we're maintaining egress for passengers if there was an issue with the train or on the bridge, that there's that safe egress to get folks. So, you know, that mass is still there up in the air. But what happens with the columns is, you know, we still need to accommodate for left turn lanes. We need to give buffers for the columns and stuff. So with that, as we start laying it out, we really don't get back another lane as we're evaluating. You know, it would still be you know, go from a 2-lane that it is today to a 1-lane. It does maybe make a left turn lanes in a few locations a little bit easier, but you know, for what you get out of it, you really don't get much more roadway. You know, more lanes. You don't really get more bike lanes. You don't get more sidewalks out of it, and it does have quite a mass. And what this rendering shows is, you know, it's a cut cross section of what that bridge would look like up there. Tried to depict what the shadows would look like underneath, and then you'll see the wireframe here. This was just to give an indication of, you know, what it would look like in a station area there. You know, what that mass would be at a station area. We would need to widen it out for that. Any questions on aerial? Okay, I'm gonna slide over here to side running. I think one of the thoughts is, or one of the questions that we've had come through is, you know, center running. You know, what would be? Are there advantages to side running? You know, instead of splitting the traffic up, maybe gives a little bit more room to those single lanes through there and putting the traffic on one side. And so this is a graphic, and again, this could be east side, west side, you know, north side, south side. You know, you could flip-flop this over, and you know, this would be representative along either Broadway or Lowry or other options on this. But as you see, you start pushing up the guideway to one side. It does center that train more on one side of the road than the other. But one of the things that we're finding is an issue with the side running, especially in places like Lowry, and West Broadway is the impacts it has to access. So if there's driveways, alleys, unsignalized intersections. So, for instance, if we had cars coming this way, there's an intersection, we can't just have free right turns to turn at that intersection. That intersection needs to be signalized for those free right turns. So that would hold up traffic. So we would need to start putting in right turn lanes, make sure that that intersection is completely signalized and it would cut off intersections that weren't signalized through this area. It wouldn't offer, for instance, in this picture, that free right, right in, right out turn movement at a unsignalized intersection. So I'm going to flip here to kind of show what the quantified impacts are to that. So we did look at West Broadway and Lowry and what the impacts would be with unsignalized intersections or with the intersections and what it would do. Was there a question? Okay, and what this map is just to indicate is showing where signalized intersections would need to be maintained, but then showing where driveways and alleys would need to be closed, just to keep those conflicts in place. And what happens when we start closing those access points is those properties become, potentially a total right-of-way take in this area. So it's much more impactful to have side running in an area like this than it would be a center running. So this kind of quantifies some of the closures, alleys, driveways, and roadways. And with that, we're at like 35 impacted areas, and a fairly similar number if we flip the map here and if we were to switch the side running to the northeast side on West Broadway. Going to Lowry, really a similar condition, maybe even a little bit more impacts on this, a lot more alley closures, a lot more driveway closures, and so even more impacts with a south side running, maybe, and even more impacts with the north side running. So that's one reason we would not really support, and we're not recommending side running through this area, or as we go back to the other elevated section, some of the reasons why we're not promoting that. So questions or discussions on this?
I have a few questions.
Sure.
Hey, Nick, thank you for going through this.
Dan.
So just to be clear, since just for, full disclosure, I'm working on a development on the corner of Girard and Broadway. And I've talked to all the property owners at that intersection. And just to be clear, I know that you stated that you're still kind of fleshing out how you would have the potential turn lanes on that location. Well, that location has about 80 feet of, I believe it's about 80 feet of right of way. Is that correct?
Yeah, 80 to 85, I believe. I think you're right.
And that includes the sidewalk. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so that's the intersection that connects basically Girard, Golden Valley Road, and West Broadway. Because of how that's working, you have the school board, which everyone leaves mostly on Girard because of the turn line, or because of the light. They also live on Fremont, but and you have all that traffic. My question is, has the county discussed any? I'm assuming there's some conversation about some sort of taking or some sort of land availability, or is it possible to have a light rail that also has a turn lane in the light rail lane? I mean, I'm just trying to logistically figure out how this would work.
Yeah, well, and that's a good question. I start backwards here. I think we want to keep traffic off of the guideway. That's really not a safe condition. So that one would be something that we would avoid. But looking at the intersections, that's kind of getting back to the, looking at the operations along these routes with our initial workshop, is to really evaluate how does the network work up there? How do all these intersections work? Are there intersections that we can, maybe take a look at and combine so we can get, a full access? So how an intersection operates today may not be exactly how it would operate in the future, but we want to see what our options are and go through. We'll be going through intersection by intersection and for this instance, it's can we maintain a left turn? Can we get a left turn in there? Or what are our other options in there?
Well,
Dan?
oh, sorry, I just had one. Oh, go ahead. I'm Dan.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Dan, did you want to jump in on this too, or?
No, I mean, I can. Ian, that's one of the reasons why we worked so graciously with that developer on the corner of Girard and West Broadway, meaning you, in order to, could we keep that building back an additional 5 feet? Because there, in some intersection areas, there may be areas where we can acquire a little right away, but it doesn't result in a total taking of the property, right? We might be able to squeeze a little bit off of the front of the school district side, but we haven't gotten in part of this workshop. And I don't know if you discussed this workshop we were going to do with city staff, Nick, but part of this workshop is to really lay down and look at, okay, where are the best spots for traffic signals? And if these are the best spots for traffic signals, what are the right-of-way acquisition opportunities at those corners? Are there buildings set back? Are the buildings built right on the corner? If they're not set back, can we move the traffic signal to another intersection to get the left turn lanes in? Find that spacing. Where would we put pedestrian crossings? Where are the most optimal places? And then also to be guided by the community on, okay, what are the sacred, do not purchase, you will not purchase right away from these parcels. But on these parcels, right-of-way acquisition might make sense. That whole kind of discussion is really, now that we've kind of laid out, this is how we think LRT would work on West Broadway or how it would work on Lowry. Okay, how do we now take the next step and talk about where are we putting intersections and stations, which would result in having some potential for right-of-way acquisition.
Well,
Does that make sense?
it does make sense. I just want to follow up with one more thing, and then I'll stop talking because I know that the people in the North Side group know that I can talk. Stop smiling. Okay, so the one thing that I was going to say about that is that in that particular intersections, I mean, the intersections of Girard, Emerson, and Fremont, you have some intractable entities there. I mean, you have the school board, you have Shiloh, you have juxtaposition, you have, I mean, in theory, you could, but you have the Episcopal buildings where Sammy's Avenue Eatery is. You have the Native American Center or the Upper Midwest American Indian Center. You don't have a lot of leeway there, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm some sort of, I don't know. I just think that it seems that the options you have on those particular intersections are very limited and will require a lot of political capital to take any of them. I mean, maybe you could make an argument to take the Popeyes chicken. They do have really good sandwich. But my point is it's really difficult to make those work. And I'm just curious how that conversation really is going to move, looking at the fact that you actually on those intersections actually need a turn lane. And it just seems like this conversation is a conversation that is going to end in some sort of impasse. I guess that's not really a question. It's more of a statement. I'm not sure. Well, I guess it's a question. I don't know how you overcome that.
That's the challenge. You're right, Ian. That's the challenge of, that's why looking at visualizations, and I apologize, I know I was gone for the last 30 minutes at a different meeting, but that's part of the challenge of looking at visualization saying, well, it works. Well, it works to have LRT running on West Broadway for some of the lengths, as they say sometimes, the devil's in the details. Well, the details are obviously very critical here. Each individual intersection and where you can put things can make sense. And we know that if there are, we've seen even in just your previous discussion, Ian, if there's particularly a tight area, do we move LRT to 21st? I mean, is that a possibility when there's some blocks that are difficult? Do we use aerial for a short segment in order to squeeze something in? What are the various opportunities that are there? So this is why we now need to dig just a little bit deeper and continue to move this piece along.
I hope too, with the visuals, it begins to be able to show kind of how things fit up, and kind of, then you can start to have some of those conversations a little bit more in depth, because now we're beyond a line on the map. So we have, okay, kind of later we have some broader meetings, but just also really want to emphasize that we want continued discussion, especially with the Minneapolis group on some of the specifics, because that's where a lot of the solutions are more this kind of pull up your sleeves around the table and get into the weeds discussion. Like Kenya suggested something in the chat as well.
Yeah, so more to come there on options. Like we said, we know that we've got a lot of work to do. We are doing that work. We're looking for input from communities on these routes and how we can best fit and make this an amenity to the community and not have it be a detriment. So, any other questions on these route alignments? A lot are the visuals, just a lot of information there. We do have a lot more that'll be coming out for the public engagement, and as Sophia said, we're willing to have as many meetings and meet with folks that are interested and get input on these whenever possible. It really helps us. All right.
I'll kind of jump into the next section, and if people have more thoughts and comments as they give us a second to digest, that's great. Just kind of going back to the last slide, just a reminder that the RFP for anti-displacement is out on the streets. We appreciate you sending that to any of your networks of folks that you think would be interested in it. And if there's any questions, Sam O'Connell is your lady. And we'll definitely continue to update this group on that, but just wanted to give everybody an update that it's out, let people know, and we hope to have somebody on board to really further and continue that work in a very in-depth way in the coming months. With that as well, just really want to highlight that our team has, and the community cohort has really tried to be out in the world talking to people, and this month we kind of pivot from what we had been showing to kind of the new information. So we've gone to grocery stores, we've gone to festivals, we've hosted some stuff ourselves. Next slide. And then kind of coming up in the end of July, we have both in-person and virtual meetings kind of per city along the line to kind of get more into these details with the broader community and talk more. Like I said before, these are a way to collect people. Some of those more in-depth conversations on a smaller scale are also really, really appreciated. And please, let's set some up to kind of get into all of that. But just also want to have some of those catch-all things that if you're interested, you can come. Each meeting will kind of focus on the community that it's in, but we will have kind of the other cities as well. So if somebody wants to come see something in person and they can only attend Crystal, but they're from Minneapolis, there'll still be information for them there, and the same staff to kind of jump stuff off of. And next slide. With that, just kind of also want to talk about our next meeting. Our next meeting would be in August. While we haven't fully determined, we kind of have or September, just because we're thinking that August people might need time to kind of digest the information that we already have and kind of drill down into all of that. I would also like to note that September 7th is immediately after Labor Day. So there might be a desire like this round that we just push everything back a week so people don't go immediately from their long weekend into a morning meeting. So just kind of want to give a horizon scan out there for folks, and that's about it. Turning it back to our co-chairs for any other discussion or thoughts.
I don't have anything. Felicia, do you have anything at all?
Not right now. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Sophia, that's anybody else have any other questions? All right. Well, we'll see everybody then on the August 3rd meeting next month.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, Sophia, anything else?
If there's no other comments or suggestions, I think we're good. And as always, people feel free to follow up with staff as well if you have thoughts post the meeting after you digest it more.
Great. We're good to adjourn. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Take care.